Okay, it's 5:30. I would like to call to order the West Fargo Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Item B is the approval of the order of the agenda.
So moved.
Moved and seconded to move forward with the order of the agenda in the documentation. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Approval, next item, item C, approval of the minutes from the May 14th meeting. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as digitally presented from the May 14th meeting. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Minutes approved. Item D, the regular agenda. Item 1, this is a public hearing, A24-15. North Pond at the Preserves, 18th edition, request for a replat of 450 23rd Avenue East, Slot 1, Block 1, North Pond at the Preserve, 14th edition. McGillivray Rivas, continued from the May 14th. Oh, they want it to be continued again. Commissioners, any issues with continuing? Should we vote on continuing?
Move to continue. Second.
Moved and seconded to continue to the July 9th meeting. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Continued. Item number 2, public hearing, A24-14. Jason subdivision, a request for a conditional use permit for an accessory building larger than 1,600 square feet in an RR rural residential zoning district at 3712 26th Street Northwest, Lot 1, Block 1, Jason subdivision.
Good evening, Commissioners. As you see on your packet, this is a request for a conditional use permit for an accessory building greater than 16,000 square feet. The applicant, Cody Showman, is here. Should you have questions, the area is in a rural residential district, and if you go to the area of your packet, there is a site plan provided that explains a little bit of what is sought. This is the existing property that has the existing residence. The aspiration is to, oh, it's not going to show. Okay, well, skipping that.
That's my house.
Oh, there it is.
Okay. Here it is.
There it is, apologies. So the aspiration is to construct a new residence, which is not part of this conditional use, that is permitted by right, but the future proposed accessory building is about 7,800 square feet, which is in excess of that 1,600 square feet. The purpose is for personal use and not business. It is recommended for approval by the staff and available for questions, as is the applicant.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Seeing as such, I'll open it for public comment at this time. Any comment or input from the public? Seeing none, close that section. Commissioners. Any questions?
No questions for me.
Concerns, complaints? I think it'll enhance, Dave.
Move to approve with the conditions noted.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the application as presented with the conditions.
Condition noted, yeah.
Conditions noted. Any further discussion prior to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Item number 3 in the regular agenda. Public hearing A24-16, Maple Ridge at the Preserve, 8th edition, a request for a variance to reduce required minimum building control line of the COSR? What's that mean? Oh, corridor overlay for the Cheyenne River, apologies. at 3060 Cheyenne River Way, Lot 1, Block 1, Maple Ridge, at the Preserve 8th Edition. Thank you.
Thank you. This application was received in order to allow for reduction of the building control line of the Cheyenne River Corridor Overlay District standards for a single-family dwelling. Single-family dwelling is currently under construction, which was recently found to be encroaching approximately 15 feet from the 100-foot building control line, with the southwest corner of the foundation located approximately 84.75 from the established riverbank. The applicant indicated the house was placed per the permit set drawings provided by the architect, and that the encroachment into the building control line was identified recently when yard grading and landscaping was being done. As provided under the Cheyenne River Corridor District regulations, the City Commission may reduce the required building control line where it can be demonstrated through a soils analysis that soils are stable within the building control area. Requests for reduction of the building control area are handled via a variance approval process. The applicant has employed a geotechnical firm which has provided a soils analysis in respect to the home under construction. The soils analysis concludes that the home will not be impacted by soil instability caused by the riverbank. The soils analysis has been reviewed by the city engineer, who has no concerns regarding soil stability based on the findings of the soil analysis. A copy of the analysis was included in the staff report. Staff recommends approval of the variance based on the findings which is listed in the staff report. This is a public hearing, and I'm available to answer any questions, as is the applicant.
Thank you. I'll open it up for public comment or input at this time. Any comments or input from the public on this topic? Seeing none, close that section. Commissioners?
How was this discovered?
Landscaping and grading, engineering was out there and noticed how close it was to the riverbank.
I did, in the report when I read it, there's like a safety factor, kind of discussed two different safety factors, 1.8 or something like that, and a 2 point. Does that mean it's just that it's still within the acceptable safety factor for, I don't know the engineering stuff there.
Well,
You're kind of an engineer,
I
aren't you?
am kind of an engineer, yeah.
That's correct.
Maybe we can ask our city engineer.
Sure.
Apologize. The safety factor that the report mentioned, I believe they alluded to what would be a typical safety factor applied in this instance was 1.5.
So
And I-
scroll down, I think it showed
Oh,
it graphically.
apologize.
Yeah, there was like a visual of this.
Keep going down, it's a couple more pages.
There it is. So typical is 1.5?
I believe the geotech that provided this analysis, I believe they stated in their letter that 1.5 is their typical threshold of what they would, generally recommend. And that what their analysis concluded was that this exceeds that threshold level. So there's a considerable additional factor of safety. This is better than meeting the minimum.
So this is not a city engineering requirement. This is a recommendation from the third-party engineering firm.
Correct. The city engineering, we generally don't have a staff member on staff that has a geotechnical expertise. And so the ordinance generally states that the applicant should go and consult the engineer with the geotechnical expertise. And that's where this comes from, and the factors of safety reference and so on.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yep. Yes, Mr. Commissioner?
Anytime there's construction close to a riverway, I get nervous, but I'm glad that they've had the geotech work done on this and I would trust the recommendation of Stephen and Ezra, who are signing the letter from Braun, so with that, I'd recommend approval as noted.
I'll second that, just a curiosity, whose responsibility is it to make sure that this thing is 100 feet away in the end? Is it the contractor, or whoever lays it out there?
The contractor's responsible. The riverbank is established by the city engineer, so they're supposed to follow where the established riverbank is located.
Problem is, the riverbank's probably moved 15 feet in the last 3 years. So
Is it?
there's some areas where it's significant.
Okay.
Right, I presume so.
So it has been moved and seconded to approve the variance as requested. Were there conditions?
There are 3 conditions.
With 3 conditions. Any further discussion prior to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Item number 4. Public hearing, A 24-17, FMD Raymond subdivision, a request for subdivision at section 2, 11, 14, 23, 26, 27, and 34, Township 140 North, Range 50 West, FMD Raymond subdivision, Sankey, Nelson.
Before you start, just maybe a comment. So I'm personally involved on the diversion project, and my firm is the author of this plat that's in front of the board here. I've been involved in the development of this. I'm not signing the plat myself, and I have no real personal financial benefit out of this. So I guess talked to John earlier, and he didn't seem to think it was a technical conflict of interest, but I bring that up for full
Clarification.
disclosure and awareness.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. This application was received in order to plat unplatted parcels for a public flood protection project. The applicant is subdividing undeveloped parcels of property acquired as part of the FM diversion project to further define property that will be permanently used for the diversion. The primary purpose of this subdivision is to create formal property boundaries for the diversion, right-of-way, and simplify legal descriptions. Once the diversion is complete, the applicant intends to replat the subject property in order to vacate and dedicate road rights-of-way and easements as necessary, as well as to make any adjustments to project boundaries that may be needed. Because the FM diversion project is a public flood protection project, there will be no public land dedication required. Due to the unique nature of the proposed plat, the requested subdivision includes a subdivision variance to allow deviation from some of the city's typical subdivision standards. This includes existing floodplains will not be shown on the plat due to the nature and flood risk reduction purpose of the diversion. Additional right-of-way will not be dedicated for section line roads, as right-of-way dedication and vacation will take place at the time of replat after completion of the diversion, and exemption from the public dedication requirements. It's recommended that the city approve the proposed subdivision on the basis that it is consistent with city plans and ordinances. This is a public hearing. I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. I will open it up for public input and comment on this topic at this time. Any comment from the public? Seeing none, close that section. Commissioners. This is a big one. Long time in the making. How many conditions were there?
There were no conditions.
No conditions? It has been moved and seconded to approve the replat, or the subdivision, as presented. Any further discussion prior to vote? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Item number 5, public hearing, A 24-19, zoning ordinance amendments to title or relating to planned unit developments, PUDs. Nelson,
All right, thank you and good evening.
good evening.
So this item is in follow-up to last month. We introduced this item actually as a discussion item in relation to some zoning ordinance amendments relating specifically to the planned unit development zoning district. Specifically, we're looking to bring some amendments forward for section 4-432 and 4-460 of Title IV of the city ordinances. These text amendments are part of an ongoing effort to address some of the kind of low-hanging fruit, if you will, in terms of some issues or some problem areas that have been identified within our current subdivision and zoning ordinance as part of the planning needs assessment that took place about a year ago. And so really the effort here is to clean up and create some, to modify the ordinance in order to predominantly clarify a few things in terms of how the process works with the PUD and also in terms of what materials make up the actual regulatory document of the PUD itself. Additionally, we're looking to amend the approval process, which I can touch on in a moment here, and also specify which standards are eligible for modification by a PUD to create some distinction there in terms of what is and what is not allowed to be modified with a PUD. And then add some additional review criteria for approval of the PUD development plan to kind of set the boundaries for how much a detailed development plan can deviate from the concept development plan. And so before I get too far along, just to kind of summarize at a high level the PUD district in itself. A PUD district is unique in that it is a zoning district as well as a set of development, specific development plan, a specific development plan, I should say, for a specific development. And the PUD is, I'll just zoom down to the last page in the packet here. The PUD is approved. There's 3 different components to a PUD that are approved typically in 2 different stages. And so on the screen here, and this graphic's also included in your meeting packet, this just kind of outlines the review and approval process for a PUD as it currently exists in our ordinance. So the first kind of red dashed area there is stage 1. So typically a PUD, an applicant would come in with a request to rezone a property to the PUD zoning district. And at the same time they're requesting for that zone change to PUD, they're also bringing forward what's called a concept development plan. That concept development plan is essentially just a kind of a high-level conceptual site plan of the specific development. And so those things are reviewed. First step is to be reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission at a public hearing. So the public meetings here are the yellow boxes here. So the rezone and the concept development plan would be reviewed at the same time, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission is currently the decider on whether or not to approve a concept development plan, but a recommender in terms of recommending to the City Commission in terms of the actual rezone. And so the rezone moves forward then to the City Commission, at which point in time there is a second public hearing in front of the City Commission. Since all rezonings are ordinances, there is a first reading and then a second reading of that rezone ordinance to the PUD. So that's stage 1. So at the end of stage 1, if everything gets approved, we have a rezone, we have a new zoning designation for the property, along with an approved concept development plan. However, before a developer can start construction on that site, they also need approval of what's called a detailed development plan. And so that's where stage 2 comes into play. And so once they get their preliminary approvals and kind of have some assurances, if you will, from the city that what they're planning to develop is doable and kind of meets all the boxes in terms of what the city's looking for, they would then put together their typically their development or their construction package. They would bring that forward then for review of the detailed development plan. And then that's a two-step process in terms of it gets reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission with a recommendation that goes on to the City Commission, and the City Commission ultimately decides whether or not what they're planning to construct conforms with what they said they would construct with the approval of the concept development plan. So kind of taken in totality, you can see it's kind of a 5-step process in terms of 5 different meetings here. The rezone is 3 different steps, and then they come back for the detailed development plan, which is some additional 2 steps. So the major change in terms of the process steps that we're proposing with this ordinance amendment is to take the detailed development plan and allow the Planning and Zoning Commission to be the decider to ultimately approve that detailed development plan. Essentially, what the Planning and Zoning Commission would be doing is just verifying that, again, what they're looking to construct substantially matches with what they were approved with the concept development plan. At the same time, we would also add instead of the Planning and Zoning Commission approving the concept development plan, the Planning and Zoning Commission would provide a recommendation to the City Commission, and that recommendation would go along with the rezoning recommendation to the City Commission, and then the City Commission would be the one actually approving the concept development plan. And so what it does is it essentially kind of more front loads the City Commission's approval at the concept development plan stage, so that the City Commission is weighing in on that concept development plan, which they kind of already are doing that just by the nature of them reviewing the request for rezone anyway. It's all kind of one package, if you will. So not much is really changing there. It's just kind of a semantics in terms of
Can I ask a question on the timing? So first reading, second reading, that's a month apart typically. When would the decision be made on the concept plan? In the first one or after the second reading?
That's a good question. I guess typically we'd probably have it, we'd probably want it tied to the second reading. That's how we handle the plats. It's presented as part of the.
So it would essentially kind of have 2 readings as well.
Yeah, essentially. Very similar to a plat. A subdivision plat has, if there's a zoning that goes along with a subdivision plat, the plat essentially gets presented twice to the City Commission as well. But
Okay.
we want everything kind of to be finalized at once, so that would be that second reading.
And then it would be this commission's responsibility to ensure that the detailed plan does not deviate substantially from the concept plan.
Correct.
Since it's not going back to the City Commission
Yep.
anytime thereafter.
Yep, so it's essentially one last check at the Planning and Zoning Commission level to make sure that what's being constructed matches with what they said they were going to do at the beginning.
And, sorry if I'm asking too many
No,
questions.
not at all.
One of the things that you mentioned earlier is that better clarification of what is included in that documentation for final. What is that list of what is in a PUD documentation that is essentially what is approved? That's where, in the old process, there was a little bit fuzziness,
Yeah.
or grayness, I should say. As far as the landscape plan, is that in it, or is that just a reference?
Yeah, so not all of that is going to be specified in ordinance. I will kind of specify that. What we've tried to clarify here, and I'll see if I can pull it up in the text, but for each of these elements, so the concept development plan and the detailed development plan, we've tried to better specify kind of what is required at the time of application. So the application submittal for PUD, concept plan and zoning district here. So this section kind of specifies what the concept plan shall include. When it comes to the actual documentation at the end of this process, though, what we would like to do is basically when we have the ordinance that amends the zoning of the actual piece of property, that zoning ordinance would incorporate any of the aspects of the development standards that they're looking to modify. And so maybe just to take a quick step back in terms of how the PUD is intended to work as well. The intention is, and kind of how it works in practice today, is we identify a base zoning district. And so I don't know that that word is necessarily used in the ordinance, but informally we call it a base zoning district. And so somebody wants to rezone a property to PUD for the purposes of, a retail store of some type, but they can't quite make it work in the limited light commercial zoning district or what have you. They want to modify the landscape requirements, let's say. And so they apply for a PUD in order to do something a little bit different or unique with landscaping. Instead of trees, they want to do some rock garden, I don't know. The application would specify that light commercial is the base zoning district, but we're going to be modifying X, Y, and Z from a typical light commercial zoning district for purposes of this PUD. And so going forward, what we'd like to do is when that ordinance comes forward, that rezone ordinance that says this piece of property is rezoned from agricultural to PUD, that ordinance will specify this is the base zoning district for this PUD, and these are the modifications to the base zoning district that were approved by City Commission. And so, maybe some examples are instead of a 20-foot setback, instead of a 20-foot front setback, there will be a 15-foot front setback. So those are clearly kind of spelt out item by item right in the ordinance.
It's essentially baking in variances to that, some base
Yep.
zoning.
And that's kind of that's what a PUD is. It's a customizable zoning district. And so we're just kind of taking some extra steps in order to be a little bit more formal with how we're documenting what is being approved in terms of the regulatory aspects of the PUD. And so if something's not specifically spelled out in that ordinance, then it defaults back to whatever that base zoning district was identified as. So everything will be identified as having a base zoning district to default back to. So that's the main, I guess, change in terms of what will be documented.
But there's also, the PUD is more than just a customizable zoning. It's also has a more constrained final approval. The detailed plan has a lot more in it than is described in the zoning. And what's included in that detailed plan, is that spelled out here? I didn't.
Yep, so I'll just scroll down to the detailed development plan here.
Maybe not constrained is the right word, it's more specific. I don't know.
So this is where we try and kind of specify what a detailed development plan, should include or shall include. So a copy of the subdivision plat, including lot lines, easement, public rights-of-way, and then subsection 2 here, detailed site plans and construction documents illustrating size, location, arrangement of buildings, including lot size, building space, setbacks, yards, etc., parking areas, private and public streets, sidewalks, and other transportation facilities, including specification of pavement materials, landscaping, screening, and final ground contours, common ownership spaces and recreational areas, sewer, water, and other utility lines, garbage, dumpster, refuse container locations, proposed signage, and then building elevations.
Is all this then officially filed and then controlled too?
Yep. So what we'll do when we bring it forward for final approval, so in this case, the Planning and Zoning Commission for final approval of the detailed development plan. And this will be kind of the non-codified aspect of this is, trying to come up with some type of a format or template that we can kind of package these things up with that is a little bit more uniform. Just due to the nature of the PUD, every project's going to be a little unique in its own regard, and so, sometimes some of these elements might not really apply. So if it's just a single site PUD, we might not need to see the sewer, water, other utility lines, for example. if it's just, you know, a single building with standard hookups. But trying to label it in the packet in terms of this is the detailed development plan, you know, differentiating what the detailed development plan is from some of the additional kind of informational documentation that you might find as an attachment to a packet. But at the end of the day, I want to say it's spelled out in here a little more clearly, but the rezoning ordinance to PUD, the concept development plan, and then the detailed development plan are the three documents that make up the PUD. From time to time, we also might have a fourth document, which would be the PUD development agreement. So if it's something a little bit more complex, or if it's a PUD that involves private infrastructure, or like a private street or something like that, oftentimes we like to detail, you know, things like road maintenance and who's responsible for reconstruction and keeping it in good shape. So that would be a fourth kind of component of that PUD. But really, those four documents, 3 or 4 documents, depending upon the nature of the PUD, would be the final documentation for what constitutes the PUD. And those 4 documents alone should kind of will regulate the development. So, I don't know if that helps answer your question or not, but that's not really spelt out in our current
Those 4
code.
documents are filed with the city, and that's what then can be used to control.
Correct, yeah, it would be filed with the city. There is a potential to record those documents. It gets a little tricky when we start recording graphical site plan type documents that those don't record well. And so I don't know that that's a viable option for kind of documenting or kind of memorializing the PUD long-term. And so it would ultimately be something that would be on file with the city, though, indefinitely.
And the PUD then is attached to that location or to the owner. So if ownership changes,
Oh, it's specific to the property, not the owner.
specific to the property, so
Correct.
could be sold.
Yep, yep.
Does this impact anybody in retro, or is this just going forward?
This would be going forward. So you might recall, we previously toyed with the idea of kind of making the PUD an overlay zoning district, which the reason we shied away from that approach was that would create issues with existing PUDs. And so as much as possible, you know, we tried to keep the skeleton in place, if you will, so as not to cause too much disruption for existing PUDs. So those PUDs, they exist as they are. They still have their regulatory pieces that were approved at the time. But if they were to come forward and request an amendment or something like that, they would follow the amendment process as outlined in the code here. And so, which, again, it's detailing some of the requirements for their application, and then a slightly different approval process would be the major change that somebody would experience if they were to amend their PUD.
Aaron, can you go down to those chart of the new
Yep.
way? So the question I got is the city commission's final say under this would be based on a concept plan.
Correct.
So from their perspective, that's the detailed final plan, because they're gonna, if they approve it with whatever they say, they expect what comes out the back end is gonna have that in. So from that point forward, which supposedly looks like we're the final review, it's everything is said to be. But if there's any deviation at all from the city commission's thing, staff's not gonna allow it to go through the final review? Or where does it have to get kicked back to, like they change the landscape plan? The commission says, yeah, I like that concept landscape plan, they come back and don't want trees or something.
Yep.
So that would kick it back into the process, because otherwise it comes up to us, and in my mind, if the city commission is expecting this, there should be absolutely no deviation from that last step.
Yep. So the intention is to add some of the, this is the reference to the review criteria. So when it if within the, see if we can zoom in, maybe not. So it's page,
Substantial compliance is the key word there, right?
yeah, so page 7 of the proposed ordinance attachment here, but the PUD detailed development plan review criteria. So it basically says PUD detailed development plan may be approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission if it is determined by the commission to be in substantial compliance with approved PUD concept plan. The PUD detailed development plan may be deemed to be in substantial compliance with the PUD concept plan so long as, when compared to the concept plan, it does not result in, and then we have these criteria here, so an increase in project density or intensity, including number of housing units per acre or amount of non-residential floor area per acre. So if they're adding floor space or adding units to, whatever the case of their PUD might be, that would be that criteria would not be met in that case, in which case they would have to kind of start at the beginning then and revise their concept plan and get reapproval of that concept plan before you'd be able to
I
approve
think
that.
if you're gonna allow some deviation, you better have a pretty detailed map as to what's okay and not okay.
Yeah, and so the expectation is that they shouldn't really be deviating much at all. There's, some deviation is expected just due to the nature of the design process. So once they get their engineers and their architects together and they, figure, oh, we forgot about the, the fire truck access road. We're gonna have to shift the building south 20 feet in order to accommodate that. Oh, and that's gonna, we're gonna have to put the fire hydrant over here now because of that. Those types of things are pretty common, and so that's really what, is somewhat subjective, and that's why it goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission, because ultimately it's up to you guys to decide, does this substantially meet with what the concept plan is or not? And if you guys feel uncomfortable with it, or if you feel that they've changed a little too much from what they said they were gonna do, you can deny it. But yeah, before it even gets to the Planning and Zoning Commission, there would be a staff level review, and so we're looking at the same criteria, and we would say, no, it's,
I'd be uncomfortable
This
though.
commission to determine whether it's substantial compliance or
Yep.
not.
yep, correct.
And, you
Yeah,
know,
that's the only thing is, there's,
gives us
I just feel, I
latitude.
would feel not, you shouldn't override the city commission, I don't believe, but. Now, again, if it's minor, like, you see, well, they're putting 3 trees over here instead of over here, I understand that, and I think most people would, but what's substantial mean? Substantial to us might not mean much, and to 3 city commissioners, it means a lot,
Yeah.
Maybe something's, I'm not saying your plan can't go forth, but I think you better consider, or we might get into a situation where all of a sudden goes from concept to something more significantly different at the detailed end.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say, staff doesn't have a strong opinion on that. If the preference is that city commission review the detailed development plan. The intention was to just streamline the process a little bit, because it can be a lengthy process from start to finish when you're going through multiple rounds of meetings, and you guys only meet once a month.
2 reviews by the city.
Yep. So that was the only intention. But like I said, if the preference is to have the city commission do the kind of the final sign off, staff would have no concern with making that revision either, so.
Well, if it goes from us in the concept plan, it's 2 weeks to city commission, or most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Could the developer, whatever, have a 99.9% detail plan by that point, so that the city commission, this is what I want to do, and then we review that when it's
Yes.
final. And what I'm saying is, because after that point, the way it's outlined is the city commission is done, they've already approved it. So then we end up having to make sure there's not something hidden in the changes or even obvious that we have to make a judgment as to whether the city commission needs to look at it again.
Sure. Yeah, and I will say too, there was, with any time we have the Planning and Zoning Commission approving something, there is an appeals process. And so I think we did spell that out a little bit more clearly in terms of a timeline. So if any of the parties do feel that the Planning and Zoning Commission erred, they can appeal that decision to the City Commission regardless. So if it's, just to throw that out there, I guess, or to highlight that.
Well, for the record, I like the changes and the improvements. What I read through does seem to make it a little clearer what you can do and can't do. That was also improved here.
Mhm.
Now, I read it in more detail, what we reviewed last month. Did anything really change
No,
to the final version? from
Yeah.
last week?
sorry, I should clarify that. There's been no change from
Okay.
last
so
month to
What I
this
read
month.
last, when we
Yep.
reviewed in the discussion.
Yep.
It's consistent, okay.
Any other questions on anything that really kind of, I think, summarizes the amendments that we're looking to make, so I don't have much more to present, I guess, outside of any other questions that you all have.
Okay, thank you. Public hearing, so I'll open it up for public input and discussion. Is there any input or discussion from the public? Seeing none, close that section. Clear as mud. Kidding. Commissioners?
I'll move to recommend.
Been moved and seconded to approve the amendments to the planned unit development ordinance. Any further discussion before vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Amendment approved. Good job. Are there any non-agenda items to cover? Then we can move to item F, adjournment.
To adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Right on.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone.